Okay, so we've talked about the Articles of Confederation, we've talked about the Constitutional Convention, and now we're going to look at the differences between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists and their views and their ideas regarding various issues. So when it comes down to talking about the ideas of perhaps a constitution establishing a strong central government, we know that the Federalists favor that. Those are the people who are there writing and constructing that, while the Anti-Federalists oftentimes oppose that idea of a strong central government. And it notes here that the chief worry of the Anti-Federalists was that the states would lose their influence with the growth in the national government's power. So they felt that the states would be hurt as regards to that, and that the strong central government would perhaps become tyrannical. Another aspect of this is the dealing with the issue of the power of the 13 states. The Federalists at this point thought that they should limit the powers of each state, and by doing that they would allow the Senate, which would have 2 representatives per state, would be adequate representation in Congress. On the other hand, we have the Anti-Federalists who believed very strongly in the support and influence of each state, and they believed at the same time that these Anti-Federalists believed that local control was key to the idea of democracy because they were more in touch with their people and it was less than a national issue. And this is where we start seeing the ideas of states' rights, of the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions coming around in nullification crisis later on in the 1800s. With regards to a Bill of Rights, a lot of the Federalists thought this was not necessary at this point, and that the states, with their state constitutions, would be upholding these ideas. And a lot of the Anti-Federalists, on the other hand, would not have accepted the Constitution had it not put in a Bill of Rights. So the absence of a Bill of Rights in the original Constitution was seen as a real threat to civil liberties and the individual liberties of the citizens. With regard just to the issue of the Articles of Confederation, we know that the Federalists opposed it, eventually scrapped it completely, and thought it was very ineffective at this point. They thought that the power of Congress was limited to the states. The states had too much power. So the Anti-Federalists, on the other hand, were kind of a little bit curious to why the Articles were not amended or revised, and instead they had been abandoned. And this is all starting back in Annapolis in 1786, and eventually in Philadelphia. They suggest that we need to have a national convention to modify and revise these Articles, eventually throwing them out. And with regard to the size of the nation, a lot of the Federalists believed that a large republic actually was able to exist. It wouldn't actually encroach on individual rights. It actually would protect individual rights because it was so large. On the other hand, the Anti-Federalists saw that a small republic could only protect the rights of the people. So small government, each state, as we saw in the Articles. And at that point, they had no evidence or any experiment that had shown the ability of a large nation to hold and provide a strong republic at this point. And then lastly, some of the supporters that were found within the Federalists are going to be your large farmers that own plantations, your wealthy merchants, and some of your artisans, your well-to-do people. On the other hand, your Anti-Federalists generally were small farmers and usually in the more interior rural areas in the countryside. And as it mentions here, some issues to note is only a few wealthy men like Mason and Randolph of Virginia and Jerry or Gary of, that's where you get gerrymandering, Massachusetts actually were kind of members of the Anti-Federalists. But they were kind of a little bit suspicious of a strong central government and what that government could do with regard to civil liberties or rights. Could it take it away and so forth? So these are kind of some comparisons between the various positions and issues that were being debated at this point. And then later on you'll see how the Anti-Federalists kind of morph into this Democratic-Republican group under Thomas Jefferson while the Federalists remain the Federalists. So we'll just kind of talk about that later on, but just to give you an idea visually as well as to verbally talk through this. Hope this helps. Good luck.